Hey there, welcome back friends. In our last video we have talked about web application exception and we tried to return a entity in JSON format. Moreover, this method is rather very simple where we are simply returning a string response. We are not trying to make this method complicated by returning a yet another JSON response, which is a very easy to understand method. But when we added the exception handling part, this method started looking a little bit complicated, right? So in here we are trying to return JSON response when there is an exception. Then we are simply returning a string when everything is good enough. Still, there is little bit of complexity. Now friends, this exception handling part, even if we try to handle it directly inside the resource or inside the service layer, it will definitely add some complexity in your business logic. The better way is to map the exception type to a different layer, an exception layer. So in this video, we will try to understand how we can map the exception to a different class. So interesting stuff is coming up. So first of all, let us create a package. So in here, we will highlight a package. We will create a new package first of all, and the name of the package would be org.steadyeasy.showroom.exception. In fact, the name of the package would be exceptions, a plural form. There could be like multiple mappers, and we will talk about multiple mappers in our forthcoming video. Alright, so in this package, in this exceptions package, we will create a new class. And we will give the name as generic exception mapper. And we will click on finish. Let me expand this, and this particular class will implement a interface. So this will implement exception mapper, and this particular class will come from javax.ws.rs.ext. So this is important. Now friends, this particular interface is of raw type, and we must use or infer a type which is subclass of throwable. As of now, as we are creating a generic exception mapper, throwable is good enough, but later down the line, we will again check the custom exception mapper. Alright, so in here, there is this error. Let me hover upon this error and let us add the unimplemented methods. Alright, so in here, we have this method toResponse. This is very important, and we must implement this toResponse method. So in here, let me create a response and then we will return the response. Now friends, in our response, we will add an entity. So in here, first of all, let us create a error payload. That would be rather good. So it would be like error payload, error equals new error payload. And let us give the status code as 500. We will use the generic status code because definitely this is a generic mapper, and a message would be like internal server error. Alright, and now let us create the response. So it would be like response dot status, and we will make use of the enumeration status. It would be like internal server error, and then we will also add in the entity. We will pass on the object error, and now is the time to build this response. Alright, so this looks good, and we will directly return this. So in here, we will return this response directly, and we don't need the statement null. Everything is good enough. Alright, so we have a generic exception mapper now. So now if we navigate to demo resource, let me expand this. In here, what we can do, we can get rid of these two statements. We need not to worry about it. And we need not to worry about the response again. We will simply call in web application exception. We need not to worry about anything else. In fact, we can also get rid of this web application exception. In here, we will simply return a exception of something else. It could be like exception of exception type, or exception of not found type, for example, not found exception type. So in here we have this constructor not found exception. So this will throw a not found exception, which is nice. All right. And now finally, let us check whether the mapping is good enough and whether we are able to map and we are able to return a proper response or not. All right, the application is up and running, which is nice. And we can definitely navigate to Postman real quick. And in here, definitely our home page is giving us hello ChecksRS. So hello, you again. And in here, if we have the header and we hit the URI/demo, we will get the response. The value of header is a test. So we are able to run this particular statement, which is nice. Now let us check what happens when we throw the exception. So in here, let me get rid of this and let us check. And there is this error, which is a crash. Somehow our mapper is not registered. So now let us quickly navigate to our generic exception mapper. The reason why this is not registered because we haven't made use of a annotation. So in here there is this annotation which is provider, and if we make use of this annotation provider, then it will register this class as a mapper. So this annotation was missing. This is the reason why we were getting the crash. Alright, so I have just restarted this application again. Restarting the application is important whenever we make use of this provider annotation. I have already restarted in the background in order to save some time. And now let us retry. And I'm pretty sure here is the output. The output message is internal server error. The status code is 500 and the status code in here is also 500, which is nice. So this is the advantage of using exception mapper. Alright, so this was it for today's video. In our next video, we will explore something more interesting related to ChecksRS. Thanks for watching. Have a nice day and take care.